that would have brought us as much as $9 million a year in lease income. Imagine if we took the EPCAL property, if we leased it for 20 years, if we got $9 million a year in a relatively benign use that would not create traffic, that would not create blight, and got that property back at the end when presumably the real estate market had moved in our direction. What's wrong with that? Why aren't we doing that? When across the street there's a solar farm that someone in the private sector saw the smarts in building. There's one up the street in Shoreham that's going to make someone well off. There's one at Brookhaven National Laboratory. At every parking lot, there's or county parking lot, there's solar collectors. Why not here? So the town is sort of filled, and Councilman Gabrielson has talked about for well better than a year now a plan to build a solar farm. Again, our town board often will say the right things. It's a question of follow through, and they just don't do it. So I'm all in favor. That's a strong part of our platform. I'm all in favor of using the power of the sun to plug up Riverhead's budget gaps.
Another question from the audience is, would you support the reform of the tower law in town to allow for more wind power? I
will be honest with you, I'm not 100% of what, on top of what the tower law says. But would I support increased wind power? Absolutely. I don't know the ins and outs of the tower law, but if it's preventing us from tapping the power of the wind, by all means it needs to be revisited.
Okay. Next question from the audience is, how can the town better dispose of its municipal solid waste, for example, a waste-to-energy generation plant, or improve recycling, possibly switching to single stream?
Well, I think, I hear waste-to-energy plant and, clang, 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 warning bells go off that, we don't want an incinerator here in our town. Not just this municipality, but municipalities in general have not, and the federal government has not been very proactive in reducing the waste stream. In Brookhaven, I noticed that they have a single stream recycling program, and it works fine, and it's absolutely increased compliance. We should do that too. So that is a baby step, but an important step in starting to get a handle on our municipal waste. So by all means, we should encourage single stream recycling, and I'm not sure why. It's another issue that, a lot of these issues, they're good policies happening around us, but not here, and why?
Okay. Next audience question was, in the recent past there was an episode of dumping of asbestos-contaminated material at EPCAL. And the question was, who is responsible for that dumping, and what can be done in the future to prevent such dumping on town properties?
Well, I'm not, is that your question or the audience's question?
It's an audience question.
Okay, I'm not sure which particular incident they're referring to, if the questioner is talking about the material that was in dispute that came from, is that what we're talking about? Yeah, look, I got a real problem. One of my opponents has her office at EPCAL and holds court there. I don't know who her clients are. I don't know. She won't tell you. And that's a big problem. There's also a couple of thousand cars parked outside the window of that office there. There's a lot of bad things going on at EPCAL. And I think we've got to get a handle on it. And that means you sweep code enforcement through there. That means in some cases you use the police. But EPCAL is a place that's ripe for mischief. And I don't understand why we didn't get to the bottom of that. I don't understand how it happened. I went back and I looked at the transcripts and the videos of the meetings and the chronology, and I'm sorry, I just don't buy what my opponent had to say. She sat at 6 weeks worth of meetings over a long time and sat mum knowing that that material was there. I don't buy that she didn't know what was there. And when you want to be the supervisor of the town, you have a threshold responsibility to be on top of these things. And that was a very ill-conceived, unfortunate incident. And I'm sorry, but my opponent's fingerprints are all over it. And EPCAL's ripe for mischief. And there's a lot of acreage there and a lot that doesn't get patrolled. And when I see 2,000 cars outside a window in plain day, we got to do something to protect that property because it now belongs to the people of Riverhead.
We have time for one more, maybe two more quick questions. Are there any other audience questions?
Bill, I can do one. I'm sorry? I can do one. The Pine Barrens Commission is working on new COPE amendments. Where would you come down in terms of, as a supervisor, voting on those new amendments? Have you been briefed on them at all, or if not, I'll send them to you.
Yeah, I'm not familiar, as I should be, to be able to
Right.
say, here's how I vote.
Right.
And I haven't monitored, I've been running, I've been shaking hands. And so I don't know every twist and turn of where they sit now. So I support strongly the fight to keep our aquifer and for clean drinking water. I was pleased to be endorsed today by the Long Island Environmental Voters Forum. So I'd be a diligent watchdog. The supervisor, as I'm sure most of you are aware, sits as a member of the Pine Barrens Commission. So I'd have to see the specifics before I commit to how I vote. And you have my email.
I do.
Do you have some
guess.
closing remarks then?
Yeah, I thought about it on the way over, and for me, this is my favorite time of the year here. You know, there's the silver of winter in the sky, the ocean, and the sound are a deep blue. For me, this is the best time of year. Cleo, my girlfriend in the second row, every morning she takes our dog Joe. He's a retired guide dog. Some of you know him. And they go to the corner of Sound and Roanoke, and that's her best place. And all of you here have a best place that you like to be. That's why we're here in Riverhead. You know, control of the commons, of what doesn't belong to the corporations or to the private sector, what belongs to the people, is what the environmental movement is all about. I don't know whether you know this, but in 13th century England, in London, if you burnt coal, it was a capital offense. You could actually be executed for burning coal. The Code of Justinian called environmental rights human rights. Part of the Magna Carta deals with access to fisheries. For a long, long time, we've seen a need to preserve the environment that enriches us. And then there's Riverhead. And I don't think we have a great record on the environment here. I don't think that we've done what we can to protect this area. I don't know when they're coming for your best place or special place. Cleo's best place and special place may be the terminus of a pipeline devised to go from EPCAL to Northville, which one of my opponents has said was an exciting idea. The fight for the environment is a daily struggle, and I think you want to know something about the person that's at the other end. I lobbied for the bottle bill and the bigger, better bottle bill. I worked for NYPIRG. I worked on legislation in Albany and Washington to protect our environment. And in the old days, when the first Macintoshes came out, I sat there pecking at the keys to bring the lawsuit that stopped the garbage barge from coming to New York. I've been there for these fights for a long, long time. And before they get to your special place, I think you want to know that someone's a watchdog and an eyes and an ears that'll protect this town. And that's what I hope to bring to the job of supervisor.
I Marcy district.
Thank you.
Just a second. This is the 7-minute stretch.
I'm dying because of the scent from the bakery coming in here.
They were gonna have a cupcake break.
So while we're waiting for Jodi, how is this format working for you? Is it interesting to hear candidates talking about the issues rather than talking to each other? Okay. I'll summarize later, but anything at the end of the evening, if you have thoughts on how you can make this better, what you'd like to see in the process, please share it with me, share it with Barbara, share it with Josh. We'd love to hear it so that we could continue this next election cycle and make it better for you.
The woman we're all waiting for.
Hi. Wait. Hello? Hello?
Our next candidate is the Republican candidate, Councilwoman Jodi Giglio.
Yes.
So,
Hello.
so opening remarks.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this evening. My name is Jodi Giglio. I'm currently a councilwoman for the town of Riverhead, running for Town Supervisor. In the last 4 years, I've been very dedicated to balancing both development and the environment, and I have several examples of things that I've done over the last 4, 5, 6 years to implement those plans. We recently adopted a rental law that captures manufactured homes. As you know, several of our manufactured home parks are situated near the river or on the river. And I feel that clustering sanitary systems and upgrading sanitary systems is vital to the river and to the estuaries. So we have recently had a public hearing and are getting ready to adopt that legislation, which would capture manufactured home parks. We have licensed corridors in the recycling of businesses and condominiums. We have stuck to the master plan, taking consideration for sewer district extensions when it comes to over-intensified development on smaller parcels. I voted no to settle the Calverton Manor lawsuit, which was a 275,000 square foot build-out, which is just west of the Long Island Expressway, across from Splish Splash. I voted no to settle the case. I have all the articles, as Riverhead Local has written them, that I was very troubled by the fact that we were going to settle the lawsuit and allow this development to occur. We took it through the court process, and we ultimately won. Whereas we were threatened that the master plan would be thrown in the garbage if we didn't settle the case, and that it would basically open up for development throughout our town. So I think the master plan is a good product that was built with a lot of community input and a lot of hours and a lot of years, a lot of money, and a lot of time spent. And I think that it's important to not extend the sewer district. I also voted no for the Community Life Center for the public hearing, because I felt that 132 units, medical offices, a church, a recreation facility, 40,000 square feet of preschool daycare, of adult daycare, was over-intensified on 12 acres of land. So I voted no to bring that project forward, whereas I believe my opponents support that project and other projects which require an extension of the sewer district. For the past 4 years, I have dedicated my efforts to update our solid waste management plan and our sanitation code to encourage recycling. And our efforts have proven that we're doing a good job. Riverhead's doing a good job now on recycling. When I took office, Riverhead was a grade F when it came to recycling. Now we're requiring our carters, both our household carters and our carters that are picking up for all of our businesses and condominiums throughout the town, to be licensed and to report to the town the amount of recyclables that they're taking in. But not only that, they're giving us 20% of the value of those recyclables. And we're taking that 20% and we're giving it to our youth in the school district with an effort and an understanding to go green by educating them. So I'm very proud of that. We have required in the contract with our household waste carters to come in compliance with the 2010 federal EPA emissions compliant trucks, and that the trucks shall be cleaned and maintained so that any oil leak on a truck in the town of Riverhead is not acceptable, because that runoff goes into our storm drains and directly into our Peconic estuary, which we all care very much so about. As liaison to the Peconic Estuary Program, I'm proud to say that I fought for the IMA, or the intermunicipal agreement, to have one coordinator representing all of the East End towns, Suffolk County, and the town of Brookhaven to bring forth problems and concerns when it comes to the Peconic estuary. And I think it's important to have one loud, strong voice representing all of the East End so that we can be heard. I support the LED lighting with the no glare, dark skies compliant, and as sitting with the planning board when applications are brought forward, even if they are older buildings that are looking to bring in a new establishment or to try and retrofit those old buildings, that they become dark skies compliant. I embrace electronic documents to reduce paper waste by upgrading our computer technology and data entry. I think it's very important. Right now, the town of Riverhead doesn't communicate from department to department. If the assessor wants information from the building department, they have to walk across the street and pull a file and get it. I think that's an archaic, outdated system. I think it's important that we upgrade our electronics. I had a resolution that was passed. 4 voted for it, 1 voted against it, being the supervisor, to spend $45,000 to upgrade our electronic capability to communicate. So I look forward to putting that forward when I'm elected supervisor and upgrading our technology so that the departments can talk and paper waste will be reduced significantly. I'm the founder of the Alternative Transportation Committee, and I see we have one of our members here this evening. And we are very dedicated to completing the Epcal Recreation Trail for healthy living and to also maintain and appreciate all that our nature at Epcal has to offer. And there's a lot of it. We are working on a nature trail, an ecology trail for students to go and learn about different plant species and the importance of vegetation and how to maintain and properly care for it and how to care for our environment, which is something else that I'm very proud of. On December 30th of 2015, we adopted legislation that I had proposed to require homes and cottages within the watershed areas of the Peconic estuary and the Sound to upgrade their sanitary systems if they are making any improvements to their home. This goes above and beyond what Suffolk County Department of Health Services currently requires. So if you're going to put in a dishwasher, or if you're going to create floor area that could potentially turn into a bedroom, even if it's less than 4, we're sending you to the Suffolk County Department of Health Services to upgrade your sanitary system. We found that there were a lot of sanitary systems that were within the watershed area that were the old block systems, where the tide would just come in and then take all the sanitary effluent out. So now they'll be required to put in upgraded sanitary systems that will hold those effluents. So I'm very proud of that legislation also, and working with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, who wouldn't normally review those types of applications. They are now taking them when we refer them over, and no building permit will be issued unless they upgrade their sanitary systems and put a plan in to do so. I voted to ban the jet propulsion that was being proposed at the Hyatt. I thought that it was detrimental to our environment. I thought that it was too close to the groundwater, that the jets would disrupt the bottom. I'm very thankful that we had the public hearing and that some of you came out and spoke against it and educated me on what it was going to be. And I voted against it. So I'm very happy.
If you can wrap up so we can have questions, because I want to
Okay.
make sure we're all on the
Sure.
same par with time.
Okay, I embrace the EPA recommendation to relocate the discharge north of the groundwater divide in the EPCAL subdivision map. I also attended the hearings that the Army Corps had about the dumping in the Long Island Sound and objected to it vehemently. We adopted public hearings for site plans requiring the applicant to notify property owners so that they would come out and speak, and also to leave natural buffers and supplement with plantings where applicable. The stormwater pollution plan revisions to our code, we now have outside engineers reviewing those stormwater pollution plans so that they can isolate and focus on the importance of self-containment of properties within the town of Riverhead. So I'm proud to say that I worked on that also.
Okay, so here's the first question. Concern for the quality of ground and surface water continues to be the #1 issue for the East End, with nitrogen identified as the most significant pollutant emanating from failing outdated septic systems. Pesticide and fertilizer use by the public and the towns is also a contributing factor. Even land use decisions on and near sensitive habitat contributes to the problem. Although each town remains responsible for actions within its boundaries, clearly a collaborative effort could be most effective in addressing the health of our shared resources. So the question is, what will you do to address septic issues and to reduce the use of fertilizers and pesticides by the public and by the town of Riverhead? And how do you propose to engage the East End towns to collectively address water quality issues?
Okay. Well, I can tell you that I had already proposed and had the legislation adopted for properties within the watershed areas that any improvements to those homes would require an upgrade to their sanitary systems. So I think that that will help significantly when it comes to the nitrogen load in the Peconic estuary. I also believe that on new subdivisions, where right now the town of Riverhead requires that 70% be preserved and that the development be condensed to a 30% area of the total lot area, that we put forth legislation to limit fertilizer-dependent vegetation on those properties, which will also help with the groundwater. I also propose clearing limits on residential lots that are part of new subdivisions and that are over 2 acres. And I also think that the East End towns should get together and look to buy an organic fertilizer for all of their facilities so that we also decrease the amount of nitrogen that goes into groundwater.
Okay. Here's my chance to speak on for a long question. Riverhead's sewage treatment plant and scavenger waste plant serve as the regional treatment facilities receiving waste from other towns, from the Suffolk County Community Center and the county jail. Riverhead continues to comply with costly Department of Environmental Conservation mandated upgrades. And beginning in 2016, the facility will divert approximately 30% of its effluent to irrigate the Indian Island Golf Course. The reuse of this effluent as irrigation reduces output to the estuary, will in the long term reduce the amount of fertilizer put on the course, and reduces the need for the course to pump over 60 million gallons of water each year. Although the town continues to operate this facility responsibly and employs creative techniques to improve the health of our surface water, it remains an easy scapegoat for others as being a primary source of nitrogen loading. So the question is the host community for this regional treatment plant, do you believe Riverhead should re-examine the rate structure of the STP so that current users in any expansion of the Riverhead sewer system pay their fair share to expand reuse option and improve the Peconic's water? And at the same time, what steps will you take to ensure that any sewer extensions do not threaten the loss of open space or sensitive habitat?
Well, as I can tell you that I do support the sustainability of our scavenger waste plant. And it looks like we are going to have to raise fees for our scavenger waste plant. I just hope that we don't have to raise fees so significantly where they're not going to come to the plant and the plant will eventually be closed down and those trucks will have to travel to Bergen Point. So we do have to look at it because right now we're not even breaking even with the scavenger waste plant. When it comes to the sewage treatment plant, I think that by not extending the sewer district for these over-intensified developments, which is the 132 units on 12 acres, or the 275,000 square feet on 40 acres, and in changing zoning and abiding by our master plan, where a secret analysis was done, and all of the environmental research was done as to what our sewage treatment plant could sustain. I think it's important to talk and have conversations with the county, which I have, about the county facilities coming off of the Riverhead sewer plant so that they can have their own sustainable plan. And then we can get the Southampton side, which is currently affecting our Peconic estuary, off of conventional sanitary systems and then come into the Riverhead sewer district where the water can be treated. And I think that that will have a significant effect on nitrogen.
Okay. Quick lightning round, just yes or no answers to these three.
Okay?
Do you support the proposed amendment to the Community Preservation Fund, which would allow up to 20% of collected monies to be used for water quality issues?
Okay, I'm still waiting for answers back from the Chief Financial Officer as to how much that will cost us if we extend it for another 20 years. So, because right now, we're not sustaining we can't make the $6 million. As we all know, since 2007, 2008, the 2% tax has not been bringing in enough money to pay the CPF debt. The CPF debt is $6 million a year. This year, we've only taken in $3.5 million, and we really don't have the money to pay the difference any longer. So we may not have an option when it comes to extending the debt out and refinancing, but I'd like to know how much it costs and at what rate.
Okay, try and keep these yes or no.
Okay.
Would you support the resubmission of an application to New York State for designation of Main Road from County Road 105 to the east as a rural corridor?
I supported it and I will support it again, yes.
And would you introduce legislation which would phase out single-use plastic bags in the town of Riverhead?
No.
Okay. Next, our coastlines are facing increasing pressures from both nature in the form of rising sea level, up to 10 inches as early as the year 2020, an increase in the number and strength of storms, and from people in the form of increased nitrogen loading, shoreline hardening structures, illegal clearing of wetlands, and building too close or even within sensitive coastal areas. As a result, inland flooding from storm surges and heavy rain events has led to costly and dangerous flooding conditions. The question is, what steps would you take to address these coastal issues to protect our shore and inland properties, as well as our marine ecosystems and their role in protecting our shores? Would you join most of our other East End towns and commit to completing and adopting a local waterfront revitalization plan?
Yes.
That you can expand on, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes. Yes, I think it's important to identify any potential hazards that would occur in the Peconic estuary and in the watershed areas to our rivers and the nitrogen loadings. And I think that an LWRP is something that works in the town of Southold, and it actually isolates and focuses on those properties that are situated on the water and addresses those issues with upgraded treatment systems once they're approved and proven effective. Then I think that that's the way to go. And I think that the LWRP is very instrumental in carrying out those measures.
Okay, we had some questions from the audience that will be interspersed then from this point. The first one was, last year there was this issue came up, but we wanted clarification on where do you stand on flyboarding in the Peconic?
Okay, well, I voted to adopt the legislation to push it out to the bay. So that tells you where I stand.
Okay. The next I'm combining with another question that we had, and that is, Suffolk towns and the county itself have pledged and committed to take action on the New York State Climate Smart Communities Initiative, and several have drafted a climate action plan to address climate impacts. The town of East Hampton has also set aggressive goals to reduce energy waste and meet community-wide electric consumption 100% from renewable energy sources like solar and wind power as soon as 2020. The question is, if elected, will you join such efforts and support meaningful policies and actions to allow the community and town government to achieve such transformative goals, thereby reducing carbon monoxide emissions and other pollutants? And would you thus not grant a permit to any new fossil fuel-driven peaker plant in Riverhead?
Number one, when it comes to the wind energy, I was part of the Suffolk County Planning Commission efforts to study the wind energy and actually brought legislation back to the town board, which we had a public hearing on and was adopted for 2-acre parcels and more. I also brought the initiative forwarded to allow for fast tracking of solar applications on residential properties, and that is currently in effect. When it comes to a fossil fueled peaker plant at the EPCAL property, I think that energy generation is a big problem on the east end, and I think that the blackouts that we have are a problem, a significant problem. I think that a peaker plant may be necessary. I think that there may be other ways of achieving the goal, and I think that we should be looking at all opportunities for increasing electricity and reducing our costs. And I would look at a peaker plant if it was a fossil fuel peaker plant or a battery storage facility.
Okay. Next questions come from the audience. There was a concern around using farmland for, lots of farmland and open space for solar arrays. And the question was, why isn't the town dump and other municipal buildings possibly being used and leased for solar? Shouldn't the town be looking at all these different options rather than just open space and farmland?
Yes, we actually put out an RFP for our landfill for solar activities on the landfill. And it was not cost effective, it was cost prohibitive to actually get that power from the landfill into a transmission line in order to distribute to the public. So it was cost prohibitive to do it from the landfill. But I think that it's important to consider solar anywhere, on any piece of land. I think that it's necessary in this day and age, and I think that the town should be exploring it on the runways at the Enterprise Park at Calverton subdivision, and I think that we should be exploring it in other areas as well. I don't know, I support it fully for consumption on farmland, but seeing as farmland is assessed differently than full fee property, I think that receiving money towards power generation and supplementing farming activities is okay. But if it was entirely solar, then I would have a problem with that. I had no objections to having at least 10% as long as it was suitably screened for farmland.
Okay, and a follow-up to that was, would you support the reform of the local tower law to allow for more wind power generation within town?
Absolutely. I supported the wind turbine at the sewage treatment plant, which would have cut back on electricity significantly. I think it would have reduced it by nearly 25%. And I think that it's important to look at all of that, especially for municipal utilities.
Okay. The next question was, how can the town better dispose of its municipal solid waste, for example, possibly a waste-to-energy generation plant, and improve recycling, possibly switching to single stream?
Yes, I have actually reached out to Ed Romaine at the town of Brookhaven to look at the single stream recycling. Right now, we have collected $30,000 in recyclables money from the corridors that are currently taking away all of our recyclables and giving the town 20% back, which is the contract that I worked on, and also the sanitation or sanitary code that I worked on upgrading for about a year. And I think that it's important that we work on recyclables and that we figure out the best way to do it. And if single stream recycling is the best way to do it, then that's something that we should be looking at. It's time to revisit that as our household waste and our municipal solid waste contracts are coming up. And I think it's something that we're collecting less and less money on recyclables as the years go on. And I think it's something that's important to look at to make sure that we are doing the best thing for the environment and we are doing it as cost effectively as possible.
Next question from the audience was, recently there was a case of asbestos contaminated waste dumped at EPCAL. And the question was, who is responsible for that dumping and what can be done in the future to permit additional dumping on other town properties?
Well, the highway superintendent has repeatedly in the media accepted and acknowledged that that was his responsibility for the dumping, and I worked with him to try and get the material off the property.
Okay, are there any other? Did I miss one? Oh no, I did, I'm sorry, I missed one from us. I thought time was next. In a town where a significant number of acres of land is cleared for agriculture, clear cutting of vegetation remains a relatively unchecked activity. Whether removal of a canopy of trees along public rights of way, or other diseased specimens, or removal of otherwise healthy trees to make way for development, there's a little attention given to the protection of this critical component of our local ecology, especially when native plants and trees are cleared, which only help invasives take a stronger hold. The question is, do you believe that vegetation protection, beyond that which is regulated through the DEC and the Riverhead CAC regulations, is necessary? If so, what would you propose to effectuate such protection? Would you propose a tree revegetation or a tree replanting program, for example?
Yes, I believe that right now, within the Calverton-Camelot subdivision at the former Grumman facility, there is a requirement for natural vegetation to remain, and I think it's important. As I stated earlier, that the town has adopted legislation requiring site plan approval and natural buffers to remain existing in between commercial developments and residential developments. I think it's important that the town look at clearing plans and look at restricting the amount of clearing that could occur on a lot, and also that the fertilized dependent vegetation be limited.
Okay. Do we have any other environmental questions for Jodi?
Bill, I still have the same one. You
Okay.
should do the same.
Please.
The COPE amendments for the Pine Barrens Commission are up for more voting process. Riverhead's been a little reticent to get along with that. The question is, are you on board with them as they are now? Have you seen them?
I haven't seen them,
You
no.
haven't seen them?
I don't sit with the Pine Barrens Commission, and it hasn't
No,
been
no.
brought to the town board at a
Okay.
public works session.
Well, they just came to me, so I'll do the same thing I did with Tony, tell him I'll send it to him.
Thank
And I'm
you.
sure Sean has them.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the audience?
Was there an environmental?
It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Jodi, if you have some concluding remarks?
I think that there's a balance between development and the environment. I agree with the master plan. I don't believe that it's necessary to spend another $1 million or $2 million in revising the master plan throughout the town. I think it served its purpose. I think that the 2-acre zoning for residential, I think that the limited commercial on the Route 58 corridor, not extending west past the Long Island Expressway or east past 105, seems to be working. I think that the master plan seems to be working. So I think that that's why I've supported any zone change or any sewer district extensions, rejected them that have come before the town board, because it is important that we keep our nitrogen levels down in the Peconic River. As liaison to the Peconic Estuary Program, I am working with them right now on a rain garden and an education program on the riverfront in downtown. And we hope to have that completed hopefully by the end of next summer. So working with the town engineer back there, Drew Dillingham. And we're going to get things done, and we're going to educate people. I think that education is a key thing when it comes to stormwater pollution prevention. And I think that we've done a good job as far as putting out pamphlets, educating the public and educating the people on water consumption and what they can do to help mitigate and stop using so much water. So I look forward to working with the environmental community and bringing forth good ideas that better our environment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you for everybody attending tonight. I hope you found this interesting and educating. Again, if you have any thoughts that we can use to make this a better event, we hope you pass them along. I want to thank Barbara. Without her help in putting all this together, it wouldn't have been possible. So thank you very much.